Ah, I got to work. Ah, no, there you are. Hey, can you see the stream? Take a look. Ta-da. Can you see it? Yeah. Kill a thumbnail though, right? Wait, what the fuck? Okay, 1 second. Let me see what's going on here. Open VR capture should be on. 1 second. Let me preview the screen.
need to get a better bun. My back's been killing me.
There you go. Yeah.
It's a weird way to make a living, but it's an honest one. Jim calls me a meat whistle one more time. Anyone hear that? It's a weird way to make a living, but it's an honest one. I should really get the laundry done tomorrow. Oh, Ketchup, I just can't quit you. Aw, crap, I really need to get my taxes done. I really have no idea what I'm doing. I really wonder what vegans think of this whole situation. It's real tiring standing at attention all the time. I'm positive this is where I left my keys. I'm positive this is where I left my keys. Meat market's been real rough lately. Why do I always get the boring posts? Go to sensitivity training, they said. You'll be less of a dick, they said. Anyone hear that? I always get the worst shift. You ever feel like you're being watched by, like, greasy folk with weird machines on their face? Why do we always come in packs of 10 when, Go to the next wander point, the state machine said. Why hot dogs? wonder what vegans think of this whole situation. I just realized I don't have feet either. That mystery meat really gave me the creeps.
Look at that, it soaked the wall. That wall's like 25 feet away from me. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today on the King of Random. Recently, we got to show you our flamethrower, which shoots flame up to 50 feet. That was pretty amazing, but it's a fairly expensive project. What we're gonna do today is show you how to make a smaller version of a flamethrower that can be built for a lot cheaper. And just to give it an ironic twist, we're going to be building it out of a fire extinguisher. This is actually a pretty simple build. Here's the materials we'll be using to make it. A fire extinguisher, a Schrader valve, a hose clamp, a 1/4 inch brass hose adapter, a wind-resistant barbecue lighter, and 2 types of fuel we'll be trying out, some lamp oil and some lighter fluid. With all of our parts gathered, we're ready to start building our flamethrower, and the first step is to empty out the fire extinguisher of what's currently in it. This thing just pops right off. These chemical fire extinguishers are usually full of a yellowish powder, and I don't want to spray it inside because it'll fill the room and get on everything. So I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to try and spray it into a plastic bag to contain the mess.
I wonder what next week's special will be. Why do I always get the board?
Seems to be working all right. All right, that is empty. You can see our pressure meter is now showing that this is empty. Nothing left in it. Let's see what comes out into this plastic bag. I don't really want to breathe this in or anything. There you go, that's
I should really get the laundry done tomorrow.
I know this cap is something that screws on. I'm just not sure how hard it is to get it off. Oh. There we go. Not that hard, apparently. A little bit of brute force. This will just twist right off. There you go. We have the nozzle that controls the flow. We've got threads that attach to the bottle. And we have this pipe that will feed whatever's in the bottom of the tank up through into the nozzle. Before we proceed, let's empty this out and wash it a little bit so we have a clean tank to work with. Oh wow, there was a lot of powder still in that. Yellow dust. With the tank cleaned out, it's time to attach the tire valve. First, I'm going to screw this back on about as tightly as I can to figure out which direction it's going to point when I'm using it. All right, that's on there pretty tight. But I want to add my tire valve on the opposite side of where it's pointing. Now let's take this back off so it doesn't get in the way while we're drilling a hole into our tank. Since this is a round metal container, it's going to be pretty hard to drill right into the side. So I'm going to use a nail to give an indentation that will help guide the drill bit. All right, hopefully that little dent will make it easier for my drill bit to stay in place. We need a drill bit that is slightly smaller than the widest portion of the rubber on the valve. I'm using a 1/2 inch drill bit. Now we need to get the tire valve out through the hole we just drilled. Since I can't reach my hand inside the bottle, I'm going to pass a string inside the hole and out the neck of the bottle, tie that to the top of the tire valve, and try and pull it through.
Oh, ketchup. I just can't quit you. I really have no idea what I'm doing.
There we go. The valve is now attached through the hole in place, and hopefully that'll give us a nice tight seal that will hold against any pressure we put in. At this point, I want to test really quick if the whole setup is going to work, so I'm going to fill it about halfway with water, install the valve back on, fill it up with some pressure, and try spraying it to see if it's working. All right, that's installed. All right, that's just about 80 PSI right there. Let's try that out. All right, here goes. Oh, there you go, that is a nice spray. Oh, and with less pressure, it's a less nice spray. That seems to be working, so let's add on the other parts to turn this into a flamethrower. As you saw, the water was spraying out in kind of a cone shape, which I think is the intention with these extinguishers. They're supposed to put out fire over a larger area, so it's better if the powder sprays out in a sort of a cone. However, what we want is more like a squirt gun for the water or the fuel to spray out in a stream that will then light on fire instead of just going everywhere. That's the point of our little brass connection here. We're going to thread this into the nozzle to try and narrow down the stream of water so it doesn't spray out as much. Now, I've seen these fire extinguishers where this nozzle is plastic, and in that case we would probably be able to just drive our little brass fitting down into it using a pair of pliers. However, this one's made of metal, so first we're going to have to tap it to add some threads.
But it's an honest one.
Put a little bit of thread tape on our brass fitting. With the brass fitting attached, let's do one more test with water to see how the spray has changed. All right, let's see if our flow is any better now. Oh, that's way better. Got a lot more distance. It's a much tighter stream. That's what we're looking for right there. With the bike valve installed and the brass fitting on the nozzle, we have an excellent sprayer. Let's add a source of heat so that when we fill it with fuel and spray it, it'll turn into a flamethrower. I'm going to try to attach our wind-resistant barbecue lighter to the side of the tank so that the flame is in the path of the fuel. We'll use our hose clamp around the tank and the lighter and try and secure it in place. To make it easier to get the hose clamp in place without also trying to hold the lighter, I'm going to use a little electrical tape to hold it in place just for a second while I clamp it down.
I wonder what kind of meat I'll be next time.
At this point, our spray should go right through our flame, so if we use some flammable liquid, hopefully we'll get a flamethrower. We're going to try two different types of flammable liquid in our flamethrower. The first is lamp oil, and the second is lighter fluid. The lamp oil isn't quite as flammable as the lighter fluid, but it's a popular liquid for using in breathing fire. Since I think we're going to have a similar spray from our flamethrower, I want to try it out. I don't want to try anything more flammable than these. I could put gasoline in here and it would almost certainly light on fire. Since we're using compressed air to power our flamethrower here, I don't want to risk an explosion by mixing it with gasoline. Let's test out our miniature flamethrower. Some of you might recognize this as the same spot where we tested out our larger flamethrower. I thought it'd be a good idea to test out our mini one in the same spot because it's really fireproof. First, we'll try it with the lamp oil, which, as I said, is the same stuff used for breathing fire most of the time.
Why the long face, he said. What a jerk.
Perfect. Now we add pressure.
I really have no idea what I'm doing.
All right, just over 80 psi. So I'll light the lighter, and then while the flame is going, I'll press the trigger and see what happens. Oh, a little.
Why do we always come in packs of 10 when,
Well, I think this type of flame doesn't have enough heat and fire coming off of it consistently to light the oil. So let's try one more try using lighter fluid and see if that's a little bit more
why do
flammable.
we always come in packs of 10 when,
Hopefully the lighter fluid is a little bit more flammable and will work with our lighter.
I wonder what next week's special will be.
So I tried firing it, I got a little bit of it to light, and then it went out. I think that even though this is supposed to be a windproof lighter, just the gentle breeze out there is blowing it out. Watch this. The amount I'm blowing wouldn't even come close to putting out a birthday candle. This is kind of sad. Here goes. Shooting right through the flame.
At least I'm not a chicken wing.
Well, that was mediocre. Well, as you saw, using our lighter as a heat source didn't work very well. I think the pressure from the oil flying out of the fire extinguisher was enough to just blow out the flame. I have another method that I want to try that I think will hold up to the pressure of the oil a lot better than the lighter. Instead of the lighter, we're going to try using a lamp wick. I picked up a few of them at Hobby Lobby for just a couple bucks. To hold our wick, I have what's called a faucet supply tube. It's a small piece of chromed copper tubing, and since it's made of copper, it's very flexible. We're going to use that to attach to the front of our tank, add a wick in front of it, and light that on fire. This tube is a little bit too long, so let's use a hacksaw to cut it short. I'm going to cut this one so it's about 7 inches long. Now I'm going to put the bottom 2 inches of this pipe in a vise and flatten them out. Clearly, if I leave the pipe straight, the flame is going to be in entirely the wrong place. But fortunately, since this is copper, it does bend very easily. We want the pipe straight in front of the nozzle, about 1.5 inches in front of it, and maybe 1 inch below it. Now we'll use our hose clamp again to secure that in place.
It's a weird way to make
that
a
feels
living,
pretty
but
secure,
it's an
and just
honest
as a
one.
safety measure so I don't scratch myself on it,
Getting
I'm
the
going to
meat
bend the
wet.
end of the hose clamp over into a bit of a loop. Now that we have our tube attached to the fire extinguisher, let's cut off about 3 inches of one of our wicks. Take one end of your wick and roll it up. You want to fit this rolled end into the copper pipe. Try to fit 1.5 to 2 inches of the wick down inside the pipe, leaving at least 1 inch of it exposed. Now when we're ready to test our flamethrower, we'll soak the wick in either our oil or our lighter fluid, and that will be the source of ignition for the flamethrower.
I just can't
We
quit
now
you.
have our new wick attached to our fire extinguisher flamethrower, so let's test it out again. We had better results in our first test with the lighter fluid than with the lamp oil, so I think we're going to skip using the lamp oil and just go straight to the lighter fluid in this one. However, before I do that, there is another thing I want to test, and that's using coffee
When I grow
creamer.
up,
This is a cornstarch-based powder that's actually pretty flammable when it's separated out. I'm going to see what happens if I put it into the fire extinguisher and see if the pressure is enough to drive the powder through the nozzle.
Coffee creamer torch in 3, 2,
I should
1.
go.
Ha-ha! That's actually working pretty good. All right, it's already out of pressure, but
Anyone hear that?
that worked all right. When it was blowing full pressure, it did sort of seem to have so much pressure that the coffee creamer was flying past the flame so fast it couldn't heat up. But as the pressure dropped, and even if I just sort of halfway pressed the trigger to lower the pressure, it was lighting up pretty good. And I think this might be a good, relatively safe way to do this, since it really doesn't have like flammable liquid getting everywhere. It's probably a little safer than lighter fluid.
All right, we had sort of mixed results using the coffee creamer. Now let's move on to the lighter fluid and see if that works any better.
It's a weird way to make a living, but it's an
All right.
honest one.
3, 2, 1.
That misery meat makes me collapse.
Oh, it worked for a second.
What kind of meat I'll be next
Then it
time?
worked for another second. That part in the middle, I'm not really sure what was going on there, but beginning and end worked pretty good. I think what caused the gap in the middle is that there was too nice of a stream. When it was first starting, there was enough high pressure that it sort of aerosolized a little bit, and that caught on fire. And then as the pressure got lower, it had just a nice little stream, and that wasn't broken up enough for it to really light on fire. And then as the liquid got low, it started getting air and liquid into the tube again, and once again it was aerosolized and was able to light. All right, let's try this with lighter fluid again. See if we can get some good distance on it. 3, 2, 1. Look at that, it soaked the wall. That wall's like 25 feet away from me.
Standing in one place for more than 4
Oh, that was
hours.
beautiful.
Please consult a
There we go,
medical
all the
professional.
pressure, almost all of the liquid gone. The wall is still on fire. Still got lighter fluid soaking on it. That's pretty great. That is how you want it to work. That was a great little just spurt of fire. That went 25, 30 feet away, stuck to the wall, burning the whole time. That was beautiful.
It's a weird way to make a living, but it's an honest
It's on
one.
fire, put it out. I caught the ceiling on fire. That made a really cool noise too.
Okay, who took my flashlight?
Woo! Well, there you have it. That is how you can make your very own flamethrower out of a fire extinguisher, which seems a little ironic, but it works really well. If you use the right fuel, this thing can shoot pretty good and it lights on fire beautifully. We tried using coffee creamer and got mixed results. I think the biggest problem is that we switched between using oil and lighter fluid and then the powdered coffee creamer, and I think it kind of got gummed up. So if you're going to use
wonder what
coffee
kind of meat
creamer,
I'll be next
just
time.
use coffee creamer. Don't switch between the two unless you have a very good way to clean
I
it
should
and
get a
dry it
vote.
completely. Lighter fluid worked great as a fuel. This whole bottle cost about $4 at Walmart, and when you only fill a fire extinguisher halfway, which I found works very well, you can get 4 or 5 different firings out of this thing. It's all pressured just by using a bike pump, and I got best results when I pumped it as high as 95 PSI. I got a really good distance, and I got a really good spray of the droplets that still traveled quite a ways. This thing fired almost as far as the full-size flamethrower. Once again, if you're going to build yourself a flamethrower, don't be stupid about it. Make sure you're wearing protective clothing. Don't point it at anything that's alive. Don't point it at anything that's going to light on fire unless it's in a carefully controlled location. Always make sure you have the proper equipment to put out any fires that do start while you're using it. Even if those fires are exactly where you want them to be, you want to be sure you can put them out in a moment's notice if you need to. This has been a really fun project that's easy to do and doesn't take much time at all. This doesn't have quite the same flame output as the full-size flamethrower, but it's a lot easier and much cheaper to build. If you've got any great ideas of something that really needs to be shot at with a flamethrower, let us know down in the comments. Thanks for joining us for this project today, and we'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then.
Please don't tell my
I did say it's used for breathing fire.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying these new videos with Nate as much as I am. He's got some phenomenal talent when it comes to building and crafting, and he really loves what he does. Give him some validation if you agree, and I'll see you in the next video.
In today's video, we're taking a classic build, the Mini Metal Foundry, and we're scaling it way down to a desktop version, the Micro Metal Foundry.
Guys, in the past you've seen both Grant and Nate build different types of foundries, but today Nate has found a way to make that even smaller, the Micro Metal Foundry.
That's right. Sometimes you don't need to melt a lot of aluminum, you just need little bits at a time. And so for that, we are going to build an entire foundry in this tiny little bucket. Here's the basic idea. Using plaster and sand, we'll make a fire-resistant shell inside of a small bucket. We'll then build a propane jet nozzle that can heat up the inside of our foundry hot enough to melt aluminum. We got this bucket for $2 at Hobby Lobby. There are similar versions at most craft stores, and that's the first thing we're going to need is a little bucket. Next thing we need is this little stainless steel coffee scoop that was from Walmart, and this was also about $2, and this can be used for two things. First, we're going to use it for measuring, and then it's actually going to become the crucible inside the foundry.
To start our build, we're also going to need a cup and a spoon just for mixing, some water, some plaster of Paris, and playground sand.
We need to fill this bucket about 65 to 75% of the way. So what we're going to do is 2 batches of plaster, sand, and water mixed up. So we need 4 scoops of plaster, 4 scoops of sand, and 3 scoops of water. Mix those 3 ingredients together thoroughly, being sure to get all of the plaster off of the bottom of the cup.
Now you have a little bit of time to mix here, but as soon as you start feeling this warm up, that's the plaster reacting to the water, and that lets you know that you gotta move fast.
This small of quantities with the sand, you've got a few minutes, but it is something you need to be aware of. Once it's all stirred in, pour it into the bucket and then mix up a second batch. If you have really big cups, you can do this all at once with 8 scoops of plaster, 8 scoops of sand, and 6 scoops of water. Okay, our bucket is now about 2/3 full. We do want to try and get out all of the air bubbles we can, so it's good to take a minute or two and just tap the bucket to sort of vibrate it and get as much air out as you can. All right, our debubbled, degassed plaster is about ready. So now we're going to take our plastic cup and we're going to drop this down into the center. The water's in there to add weight, so all of this is going to displace the plaster, and it's going to make a nice border around this cup. So I'm going to put this down and try and position it just right. Callie is going to use the tape to tape the cup in place to just hold it right where we want it.
Greasy folks with weird machines on their face?
With your cup full of water taped in place inside the plaster. You'll want to give it at least an hour, possibly more, depending on the temperature and humidity of where you are. If you want it to speed up a little bit, you can also throw it in the oven on the lowest setting for an hour or so.
While that's curing, we're going to work on building the burner.
I wonder what next
The
week's
burner
running
for this foundry isn't going to use one of the large propane tanks. We're actually just going to use the small ones, either the blue ones
What can I say?
or the green camping version.
Potatoes
First thing we're going to need is a torch head that goes to a propane tank. This is the kind that just threads right on, and normally you can just use this as a torch. However, this, while it is pretty hot, isn't quite the volume of fire that we want, and it's definitely hard to place.
Go to the next
with
wander
these
point, the state
types of
machine
propane
said.
tanks, if you turn them upside down or anything to get this nozzle right where we would want it, they do have a tendency to start flickering and sputtering after a while. And so we're gonna hook up a whole little hose and build ourselves a customized burner. We've got some thread tape, a 1/4 inch or 6mm wire welding contact tip. These things are removable, they're replaceable, and they have just this wonderful sized hole as the nozzle. We have a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch coupling. This is some steel pipe. Got 4 of these socket cap screws. They have the hex head in them, and they are machine threaded screws. This is a number 8x32 thread, and this one is 3/4 of an inch long. We have a 1/4 inch brass pipe cap. We have a 1/4 inch to barb fitting, and a 3-inch segment of 1/4 inch pipe. And lastly, we've got about a 3-foot segment of 1/4 inch braided hose. This is what's actually going to carry our propane from the tank down into our burner.
So our first step is going to be to take our coupling, file it down, and then drill and tap it so that our screws fit it.
We're filing this down because trying to drill right into the side of a curved pipe is pretty impossible, at least accurately.
Need to get a better butt. My back's been killing me.
We've now got the 4 sides of this coupling filed down, and they aren't being all filed down in the same places. We've got 2 that are going to be right here at the top, and the ones on the sides are going to be a little bit lower. Now in each of those 4 spots, we need to drill a hole using a 9/64
Standing in one place for more than 4 hours.
drill bit.
Please consult a
Once the holes are
medical
drilled, use
professional.
an 8/32 tap to add some threads.
Wonder what
We've now got all 4 holes drilled and tapped so that we can thread our screws into them. We now need to do the same drilling and tapping process with our brass cap so that our contact tip will thread into that. With a 3/16 inch drill bit, we want to drill a hole as close to the center as possible into our brass cap. This time we're going to be using a 0.6x1.0 tap. Now this contact tip threads beautifully into the threads that we just cut.
So we have all of our pieces. It's time for assembly.
With the thread tape, this should form a pretty tight seal. It was a little bit on the loose side before, but now it goes in, and it shouldn't let any gases escape. That's what's important. Now we need to take the 4 screws and fit them into the sides and have them hold everything in place. The 4 screws are going to grip onto the contact tip to hold everything in place. So the contact tip fits down through all 4 of those, and then once it's in place, we want to tighten these 4 screws by hand. Make sure that doesn't go anywhere. Once we've got it lined up, we want to take an Allen wrench and just tighten those screws down to really hold it in place. That's holding itself in place quite nicely. Just what we were looking for.
What can I say?
On the other side of this coupling, we're going to attach our 3-inch piece of 1/4 inch pipe.
Fair.
We now need to attach the hose from the propane tank onto our burner.
We need to modify this so it can attach to the hose and so it has a higher profile.
No one heard that, right? I should get a vote. I just realized I don't have feet either.
Here's it.
I really have no idea what I'm doing. That texture repeat is really obvious. Lazy dev. What can I say? I'm just a meat and potatoes kind of meat. When I grow up, I want to be a tumor. When I grow up, I want to be a tumor.
Here, what? Sure.
Why the long face, he said. Here.
Yeah, it is.
Interfacing with system node. Hold this position. Analyzing system. Static encryption detected. Neutralizing. Encryption neutralized. Hold successful. Data extracted. 3 override tokens found. Advance to next system node and
I
take it.
guess. Yeah, sure. I don't know, just bored.
Huh? Dang it! Over there. What's over there?
Override token found.
I don't know. Just pick whatever.
When I grow up, I want to be a tumor. What's that? Over there. Order up! No one heard that, right? Let's check this out. Please don't tell my parents what I do to pay the bills.
I see it.
I don't have feet either. Oh.
Not.
Interfacing with system node. Hold this position. Analyzing system. Static emission detected. Neutralizing. Encryption neutralized. Advancing to next system layer. Analyzing system.
got to show you our flamethrower.
Alert failure. Encryption neutralized. Hold
This is actually a
successful.
pretty simple build.
Data
Here's the materials
extracted.
we'll be using to make it. A fire extinguisher,
4
a Schrader
override
valve,
tokens
a hose
found.
lamp, a 1/4 inch brass hose adapter, a
Advance to
wind-resistant
next
barbecue
system
lighter,
node
two
and
types
take
of
it.
fuel we'll be trying out, some lamp oil, and some lighter fluid. With all of our parts gathered, we're ready to start building our flamethrower, and the first step is to empty out the fire extinguisher of what's currently in it. This thing just pops right off.